I guess I should unmute my microphone before I start setting up the whole entire introduction. So welcome to the live stream, obviously, of Ask Joe Anything. It's the final one leading into CyberArk Impact 24. We'll definitely have a lot to talk about there. A little bit later on today, I've got a packed first hour for everyone out there. My guest today will be joining us soon. There's a lot of events to get through first, a lot of news, a big anniversary happening here at CyberArk, and then we'll be able to take a look at some cool new things that are going to be entering our endpoint privilege security space with my guest. And then the best part of it all, the second hour, is your questions. So be sure to add those questions into chat now in preparation for that second hour, and we'll start going in order from there. So the earlier you get your question in, the better chance that it'll get asked sooner once we turn to that second hour. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen out here a little bit. I've got a little bit of a monitor situation going on here, so some of these things are going to take a little bit longer than normal for me because the movement from one monitor to another shifted on me. So you know how you can kind of position where your monitor is in the display settings. Mine is actually below, but I'm having to come to the upper top corner. And my muscle memory and my hand-eye coordination is just not working out for me today. So if you see me looking down, that is me trying to figure out where the heck my mouse is going. So apologies for that. However, some things that I wanted to kind of go through today before we brought in my guest. There's a lot going on out in the world. Next week is actually a huge week for CyberArk and for the tech industry in general. Of course, everyone is familiar with the huge RSA conference that happens every year out in San Francisco. This year, it's taking place next week. So you would know if you were going or not by now, or else you're going to be paying a lot of money for a flight to get out there. Regardless, CyberArk will have a presence there. We do have a booth there. We are going to be in the Moscone North Expo at booth 6359. And you'll be able to find our booth out there. We'll have some cool swag this year. And periodically throughout the day, at various times, we'll be serving cookies at the booth. So come by, eat some cookies. We're ensuring that they don't get stolen in the process, but we will gladly hand over a cookie for you if you can store it in your belly for us. So with all of that said, that's going to be happening next week, starting May 6th at RSA Conference out in San Fran. We've also got another conference happening that same week. Surprisingly enough, somebody wanted to compete against RSA Conference. Red Hat Summit is going to be happening at the same time as the RSA Conference, along with Ansible Fest. If you are familiar with these conferences, they used to be separate. So you would have Red Hat Summit in May, and then Ansible Fest around that September, October timeframe towards the end of the year. As of last year, they merged them and they've combined them into two conferences essentially at the same time at the same location. I guess I didn't get to experience last year because it conflicted with Impact then. So I wasn't able to attend. Obviously, I was at Impact, but I am interested in experiencing how these, identities are merging or maybe staying separated at the same location. Wish I could give you more information there. However, the CyberArk booth number is super easy to remember. We're booth number 123. So make your way over to that booth when you get there. We'll have a lot of swag. My colleague Shimron George, subject matter expert extraordinaire on DevSecOps, will be manning the booth. I was helping him set up Rosa in AWS. That's the Red Hat OpenShift for AWS platform, helping him kind of get that deployed into AWS yesterday for him to be able to show some awesome stuff on the show floor. And he showed me a really cool playbook that he built for the Ansible open source version as well as Ansible automation platform that connects to Privilege Cloud in order to provision and deprovision agent-based credential providers. So he can share with you that playbook, kind of show you the ropes on how he wrote it and how he tested it and all of the different tricks that he figured out in order to get it to all work. So that's booth number 123 at Red Hat Summit. CyberArk will be there in full force, and we're excited for everyone to stop on by. So that's going to be happening in Denver next week at the same time as the RSA conference. CyberArk has some webinars that are coming up here. They're actually webinar series. So a couple of these webinar series have already been ongoing. For instance, the foundations of identity security one here, a part of the series, Securing All Identities All of the Time, has already had a couple sessions. So you'll see session 1 was on securing developers. You can watch that on demand. Session 2 is the who's who of IT admins and how to secure them. You can watch that on demand as well. And then you can sign up for Thursday, May 9th at 2 p.m. Eastern, Going Beyond the Perimeter, Strategies to Secure Your Workforce and Endpoints. That is actually pretty on theme for what we're going to be talking about today. So maybe we'll come back to this one here in a second after I get a chance to introduce my guest, and we'll talk about this one a little bit more. There is another webinar series that's going on as well, Securing All Identities All of the Time. This one is taking a different approach where it's talking about, we've already talked about, incident response and red teams, and we're going to be focusing on May 14th on securing the modern workforce. So introducing ISI into things, intelligence, right, and utilizing those types of rules, as well as information, data metrics that it's able to collect and deal with to make risk assessments and things like that. So it'll be a pretty cool session there that's happening on May 14th. You can sign up for both on the same page. And then finally, we have Impact 24 coming up. But before we get into that, I want to take a second to introduce my guest for today. He is a senior solutions engineer and subject matter expert of all things endpoint privilege security at CyberArk. He is also an avid spear fisherman, which I think is cool, especially being down in Tampa, whereas he lives in New York City. So really interesting that he can find some places nearby to be able to partake in that hobby. Francis Yom, as I fight with my mouse to figure out how to bring you onto the stage, buddy, welcome to the show, Fran. How are you doing?
Hey, doing all right. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. You're coming in loud and clear, dude. I
Awesome.
appreciate finding the time to hop on here today. And hopefully, the spearfishing thing is still an active hobby and it hasn't dropped off at all.
Yes, it is still an active hobby. Last year, I did have to take that hobby and pause it because I had torn my shoulder, and it took a while for it to recover. But the spearfishing season, or actually the scuba diving season, starts in late May here, and it goes on till about October. So I'm looking forward to going back in the water. And,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Where do you go typically? Do you like stay around the city, or are you like traveling for a long distance to find a place to go spearfishing? Can you just do that like right there in the Hudson? Like, I don't know. I've never done this.
So the answer to your questions are, you don't do that in the Hudson. Most of the spearfishing that takes place here is actually out in the Jersey Shore, where the waters are actually quite nice for spearfishing. It's not going to be as nice as it is in Florida. Of course, your water's warmer, your water clarity is better. Things are a little bit murkier up here, but I think the fish taste better up here, honestly. So
yeah, I bet. Yeah, we've been battling a lot of red tide down here recently because of the change in the temperature and everything. So I think our seafood, mainly like the shrimp and things like that, are finally getting good again. But there was a period of time there where we couldn't have anything from the bay or anywhere close to the Gulf because of that red tide. So,
oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring up global warming, because I think that the folks that spearfish out here, we're seeing it firsthand. There are tropical fish showing up here that never used to show up here in Jersey.
Wow.
Amberjack are starting to show up. Last year,
Oh, wow.
a school of tarpon made it up here. So that was
Wow.
really interesting. Yeah.
We've actually got a city here named Tarpon Springs, specifically because of the tarpon that you can catch, off the shore and stuff. So to see them or hear about them up north is really crazy, because they tend to stick around, Florida, Georgia, the southern area of the United States. So
yeah,
that's pretty crazy, dude.
No, definitely.
So no, go for it, dude.
No, just what I was going to say is, yeah, it seems like it is a little bit crazy to go spearfishing up here. It's definitely not something that most people might find attractive or interesting to do. But among the scuba diving community here, believe it or not, there's quite a lot of IT security people in the scuba diving community, and I routinely run into folks that work for different companies, or they're security consultants. So it's kind of nice to actually be able to enjoy a hobby where the folks that I'm working with are also in the industry as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. We do a lot of fishing down here, obviously in Florida. So taking customers out on like charter fishing trips is totally not out of the question, right? Actually pretty common down here to be able to connect over something like that, which is always fun to be able to do when you have a hobby, right? Like I think a lot of times Topgolf seems to be the easiest common denominator where a lot of events take place because you know, a lot of guys in the industry are into golfing, right? And software
Mhm.
sales and stuff like that. But you know, getting those unique experiences, like getting out into, you know, the ocean and getting some fishing in and being with nature, I think is awesome too.
Yeah.
Um, you know, a place that doesn't really get a chance to do any real offshore fishing is Nashville, where the CyberArk Impact Identity Security Conference is taking place this year. And Fran, I'm pretty lucky that you accepted an invite to be a part of my breakout session. So, you know, first of all, thank you for lending yourself to me for 45 minutes at Impact. But it also means that you're going to get to come and enjoy the entire event with us, with the customers, the partners, the prospects that are going to be in the crowd. And you get to hang out on some awesome booths, I'm sure, and showcase some of what you're going to be showing off today. I kind of want to talk to you about Impact and more specifically, like some previous impacts that you've been to. Is this going to be your first Impact, or have you been to plenty before this one?
No, so this will not be my first Impact. I've been to one approximately 3 years ago, and if memory
Okay.
serves me correct, that was the one that we held in that was the one that we held before COVID happened, and it was in
Mhm.
Boston.
Yep.
And
At the seaport. It was our last time at the seaport.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So it was a lot of fun. The thing that I remember the most, the most memorable aspect of it, was being able to hang out with my peers,
Yeah.
because you know obviously we talk to each other on the phone, but we don't get a chance to actually meet in person that often.
Oh yeah, I know.
Um, and then the second part was also to see our customers and see what they're really interested in. And you know, uh, one of the things that I one of the things that I think it was really cool for me to see, especially at the last Impact, was just how many folks who were interested in least privilege, insofar as EPM, but not in the way that you might think. They were interested in EPM, but they wanted to know how they could use it for other operating systems. We just came out with Mac OS support. We were
Mhm.
working on trying to get Linux support up and running, and both of those platforms are fully supported now. And it was good to see us actually deliver on these additional platforms, because that was essentially where the market wanted us to go. They wanted a central place to provide least privilege for all of the major operating systems.
Yeah, and a lot has changed too since the last time you've come. So you'll get to experience all of the new things that we do. I think the impact that you went to, we had kind of the concept of a discovery center, and inside were booths that kind of aligned with all of the different solutions. Or I think at the time it was actually just products, right? So you'd have an
Yep.
EPM booth and you'd go there if you had a question about EPM. Now, you know, in the more recent impacts that you'll get to experience this year, the whole kind of setup and flow of things have changed. So, you know, in recent years, there hasn't been necessarily a quote unquote discovery center. It's more of an area of innovation that kind of commingles with, you know, common areas, right?
Mhm.
There's not like a separate area you need to go to. And I
Mhm.
think this year it's actually going to be even more, you know, different in the fact that it'll be hard pressed, I think, for customers to really find booths that are called specifically, you know, EPM or
Yep.
Conjure or this. Like it's going to be more formed around, you know, the what is it that we're trying to solve for you, right? Like, are we trying to secure your developers? Then why don't you go take a look at this? Because you know, there's so much stuff that's changing because of this. We're a platform now, and we're not these separate different products that work well together. Like they coexist now. And that is the message that is changing. And a lot of the newer customers get it because they're used to it from other SaaS platforms. So
Mhm.
they come in, they see us for the first time, they see our platform, and they're like, makes sense. But a lot of our more mature customers who are used to the self-hosted, method of dealing with things, I think it's going to be a great experience for them to really get a better understanding of how everything works so well behind the scenes now in the platform, and to really get a better understanding of how different the platform in SaaS is compared to, when we have all these self-hosted components that we just need to connect together. So I'm really excited for it. I'm actually more excited though for our breakout session, and we've got a couple other people that we work with on a daily basis that's going to be a part of that. So I want to talk about that with you, but I think that we did just get an announcement this morning too. If I scroll down a bit,
Yep.
Here, so we've actually released today. If no one has seen this announcement yet from CyberArk, we announced today the featured keynote speakers for this year. So the first one they announced is Kara Swisher, which I am absolutely excited for. I hope that she walks out in her aviators, which is just so classic Kara, and complaining about the bright lights, but always with the dark sunglasses aviators, inside. I love it. What do you think about this as our featured keynote speaker?
I think I think it is awesome. And I am just, if there's any reason why we need investigative journalism out there in this world, especially when it comes to computer security, you should read one of Kara Swisher's books, especially her latest one about what's going on in terms of the privacy of our content and how it's being shared across a lot of companies, frankly, and not necessarily in ways that we would probably like.
Right. Yeah. I've found her through her articles in the New York Magazine, and I also, I take in normal, news content, so I've seen her as like a CNN contributor. But the way that it's crazy because she reports on, tech related things, but she doesn't sugarcoat it either. She will call out black and white things as black and white. It's not going to be protecting the industry or protecting, the leaders in the industry at all. It's going to be just the facts, right? For lack of a better term. And I really appreciate that, especially in an era today where you don't know if what you're looking at online is real or not, right? Like I don't know if what I see on TV or videos that I see on social media are real or not, just because of how insanely rapidly, AI tools are making, faking this information so easy, and how openly available these toolkits are. So it's nice to have people who have a reputation of being a straight shooter that you can still kind of go to and cut through the extra fodder of what's going on, and trust what they're saying. So, and I believe that she is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm totally looking forward to hearing her presentation.
Yeah, I am as well. I hope that Andy Thompson gets a chance to talk with her. He did such an amazing job last year at Impact, doing his interview last year. I forget off the top of my head who specifically it was, but I just remember how well prepared he was for the interview, and how smooth it went. I really hope that he gets to do that. It was kind of like it had a fireside chat kind of feel to it. I really enjoyed it. So we'll see, if she gets the stage on her own, or if it's going to be kind of one of those fireside chat deals, but they're definitely looking forward to this.
Yeah. It's funny when I think of, so you were going to go and bring up the other speaker, but for a second there, I was just going to talk about memory lane. Like you and I, we have been in the industry for a long time, and we've seen like dramatic changes within just the last couple of years. With first off, the emergence of AI, Secondly, it would be the emergence of SaaS as the platform of choice. Like, do you remember like when we? So a couple things. One is we are celebrating this year the 25th anniversary of CyberArk. Can you believe we've been around for 25 years? I had no idea we were around for that long.
I mean, I did, but I tried to forget because I mean, it dates me in my own mind, so I'm trying to like forget that I'm getting older. No, but it is true. There's been a lot of events that have been happening this past week, you know, around the 25th anniversary internally at CyberArk.
Yep.
I can only imagine that a big focus of the Impact conference this year is going to be around that 25th anniversary as well. So I'm excited to see, you know, how they approach it. I did, you know, I was wondering, like, well, what did cybersecurity look like back in 1999, and went kind of dumpster diving through Google to see what I could come up with, and I found, you know, this U.S. cybersecurity magazine created like a very quick, brief history of cybersecurity, and it actually touched on 1999 right here. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a pretty cool title. You know, the year that CyberArk became a company was also the year that security went mainstream because, you know, Windows 98 came out, and that's what really introduced the whole idea of role-based access controls for files that you could set. Before that, file permissions were the freaking Wild West, you know? And so there was a need for you to utilize a third party outside of the operating system in order to secure those files that contained the, you know, privileged and sensitive information. And I think you can already understand where I'm going with just those words and the acronyms that we've used in the past, but that's exactly where privileged information management came from. Sensitive information management came from, right? Our PIM and our SIM from back in the early versions. And that's all it did. You know, it was just a secured vault that you would add your sensitive files into. And then you would get your sensitive files from, and they weren't sitting around easily accessible on the local file system. Because there was no Windows 98 when that was being developed and the company was being created, you know, that came out at the same time CyberArk hit the market. So very, very cool how both noticed, right, the issue of not having file permissions in place, and both had different ways of addressing it. And here we are 25 years later, and both are industry leaders in their respective segments, right? So it's really cool. And I think it's a testament to the innovation at CyberArk that they were able to really re-engineer a vision that started off as something that was immediately solved by Microsoft, by the operating system, and they were able to pivot to a different model that protected something that people weren't quite aware needed to be protected yet in credentials, right? Usernames and accounts and things like that. And here we are today, you know, talking about all sorts of identity security, not just those passwords that we really built everything that we have today off of. I really like that story. So
you know, even though
I
you and
appreciate
I
you
are
bringing it up.
even though you and I are old timers, we were not part of the original CyberArk. We're not that
I
old.
know.
But
I was a customer for a while.
And
were you a customer at all, or did you just come straight to CyberArk?
I was never a customer. I came straight to CyberArk, but my career path was always in the realms of either consulting or sales engineering. So right out of school, I worked for a company that did consulting work for Microsoft, and we did services. And we had and at the time, believe it or not, my specialty was actually email administration. I was a Microsoft Exchange expert, and this is around 2000. And around that time, I don't know if you remember, but there was it was one of the first notable worms on record that happened, Code Red. I don't know if you remember Code Red, but it was essentially a buffer overflow attack. And it was a very simple one, but it illustrated how how easy it was to break into systems at the time. Fortunately, you had to have specialized knowledge in order to do it. But one of the things that changed about the Code Red attack is that we had a script that was ready-made that someone could download, and it proliferated across the internet. And I remember that being a problem. How that impacted me back then was I was involved in managing Exchange servers, and we had Exchange Outlook, Exchange webmail. And all of our IIS servers were immediately affected and hosed by Code Red as a result of it. And I was not in security at the time, but we had some folks in security that did the forensic to try to figure out what was going on. And as I helped them pull log information out of Internet Explorer and watch how they worked, I was absolutely amazed, and it just piqued my interest. And what I realized is that that this was something that I had a genuine interest in. I should get to know this better. That started my career towards going from consulting to going into something like computer security. And around the early 2000s, this was the time of the .com. So I had a very lucky situation where the market was right, and they were hiring all kinds of people to go into the computer security industry. And I had my first job as a sales engineer working for a vulnerability management company. So that was a great experience. Yep. And
That's
then from
cool.
there, I went to a SIM company, and the thing about SIM that I loved, that was a really good experience, because when you work for a SIM company, you get to learn about everybody else's products. You cannot just be an expert at log management.
You have to bring in all the logs from them.
Right. So you have to know how to turn on auditing on all of the various devices and be able to pull those logs in. So it gave me a starting point to understand Unix, to understand other types of operating systems I didn't have any type of experience in. But being in that role really expanded my knowledge and being able to see what people wanted to do and what people were doing because they wanted to send logs over to us. I spent the majority of my career working for a company called Tripwire. And Tripwire had really cool technology. It was a file integrity company that eventually evolved into a configuration management company. Where at the end of my time there, we were not necessarily so concerned about file integrity because that essentially got commoditized at that point. So many other companies were able to do file integrity. What we did was we took a look at a best practice like the CIS guidelines for securing a system, and we would analyze your machine and compare it to the best practice and let you know what you needed to do to correct the problems to bring you into compliance. Auditors loved us. Because they were able to run our reports and very quickly see, where a company was good and where they were deficient and what they needed to do to actually to fix the problem.
Yeah,
and then
that's like I think like that's even relevant today, even as things are moving towards the cloud. But it's becoming more of like reporting on or like checking against more application specific frameworks like Salsa, but also CIS as well for the benchmarks. So that's wow, that's pretty cool that was happening even before you were employed here.
So configuration management was always hot in the from an operating system and an application perspective. But I think you would agree with me, the biggest change that we're seeing here is configuration management specifications for the cloud. Am I configured properly to give people the right access in the cloud? And we were one of the original companies to jump into that space. I know that there are other companies that started and were dedicated in that space. But it was nice to see us make that leap and have our own tool to be able to provide that type of analysis.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it's funny because like you explained your whole journey to CyberArk and your career history, and your path surprisingly follows basically my own. The only difference is that before I came to CyberArk, my role as a customer included vulnerability and monitoring. So I owned all of the vulnerability management, scanning, all of the reporting to the patching team of the vulnerabilities that need to be patched, reporting to leadership as to the status and the patching progress, I guess you could say, of things over time. And then on the flip side, um, I was dealing with a SIM at the time as well. I won't name the SIM because I absolutely hate it. And it was a
No
pain in
surprise.
the butt because like it wouldn't take in the logs straight from our applications. It had to go through condensers and get parsed and all of this other stuff before it even made it into the SIM. And it
Yeah,
was always those things that were the problem, never the
yeah,
SIM, right? So it was a constant like, all right, what's going on in the parser? What's going on in the condenser? Like what is happening here? And there were just too many points of failure in the process that all needed to work flawlessly for us to ingest any data. And so it was definitely a struggle, but um you know, it is what it is. It did definitely give me a lot of experience into what other applications could do and could
mhm,
provide by way of audit and through the logging that I was seeing and stuff, and then needing to parse because the parser wouldn't work. So you get very, very used to it very quick.
yeah.
But
I
no,
remember
that's really
I
cool.
remember when we were in the world of log management, you regex was our second language. You had to be good at regular expressions to be able to parse everything
Yeah.
that came through. Yeah. Uh,
Let's take a second and just kind of talk to everyone about our breakout session.
yeah.
um, Ask Joe Anything live happening at Impact this year. So it's going to be on Wednesday, May 22nd, starting at 11:30. They changed it to Central. Initially, it said Eastern. So I'm happy to see that they updated the time zone because it was a little confusing. But the whole idea here is we get 45 minutes for a breakout session. So the first half of that 45 minutes, about 20 minutes or so, is going to be a panel discussion of which you are one of the guests on the panel along with previous guests of Ask Joe Anything. So, people like Jared Brodsky, James Creamer, Darren Kahn, Mike Bycat. Anna hasn't had a chance to be on the show yet, but she'll be on the panel, and I plan
Yeah.
on getting her on a future Ask Joe Anything. We just kind of ran out of shows leading up to Impact, and everybody got really busy, including myself. So it's just that time of the year. Um, and then the second half is going to be a Q&A from the audience. But the whole caveat to this is, first of all, like, this is an interactive panel, and this is the first time this is ever being done at a CyberArk Impact. So audience members will be able to approach mics in the aisles and ask
Mhm.
their questions to the panel during the Q&A, just like as if you were sitting at a Comic-Con and the panel was fielding questions from the fans.
Mhm.
But the part where it's really cool is the fact that I am going to also be live streaming this breakout session on YouTube, LinkedIn Live, and Twitch at the same time. So we're not just going to
Mm.
be limited to the questions in the live audience, but we'll also have questions coming in from live chatters who are unable to attend the event and are attending virtually through the live stream. So if you're not able to make it to CyberArk Impact and you're watching this, get your questions ready for May 22nd at 11:30 a.m. Tune in to your favorite platform to watch Ask Joe Anything on, and we'll be here ready to answer your questions in the chat. You'll probably have a lot of people from the live audience who don't want to approach the mics and ask questions in front of everyone asking their questions through live chat too. So all sorts of options for everyone to get involved and get interactive, whether you can make it or not. Fran, you're going to be kind of bringing to us the endpoint privilege security spice. So I'm really excited for that, and hopefully people will bring you a lot of great questions based off of some of the cool things we're showing today, and some of which will be a preview. So I kind of want to uh, uh, take a look at, maybe some of the new things in the endpoint privilege security space that maybe people aren't so much aware of, or that might be kind of new, and kind of give you a platform to showcase some of those cool things that we want people to be aware are actually possible. One thing, at least that I'm going to be a little selfish here and see if I can't, get something on my own. There was something that I used to experience when I was on a Windows laptop, and that's when I have an EPM agent on my desktop, and I have a need to escalate my privileges. Like, I'm not an administrator, but I need to do something that requires admin privileges, like maybe install a software and adjust something in system settings. On Windows, I would always get presented with the ability to escalate my privileges using an admin account, or I could click a button to like request access. On Mac OS, I haven't. I was kind of thinking back and reflecting on the show today, and I realized that I haven't really seen that on the Mac OS side. So I know I'm probably putting you on the spot here, but do you have something that you can show me, at least, that this still exists, the step-up authentication with EPM, but specifically, I guess, for Mac OS in this instance?
Yeah, totally. So I'm glad you brought that up. I actually have an example that I can share.
Okay.
So we support Mac OS in the same way that we support Windows. And in Mac, just like in Windows, what we want to do is we want to give the user the ability to run the things that they need to as admin. And that is probably the biggest philosophical change that's happened in the least privileged world from the time that I first started here at CyberArk to where we are today. So back when I first started and I was focusing on EPM, we used to tell customers all the time, take your users, remove their admin rights, because they have too many privileges, and it's the risk is too high that they will do something, probably something that they didn't even intend to, like they were tricked into doing it from some malicious actor, into clicking on a link, going to a malicious website, opening up an email happens to be running with full admin access, and then you are, out of luck. And hopefully your remediation teams and the other tools that you have to try to stop a attack are good and will help to prevent the attack from spreading in your environment. I think that at this point in time, most organizations get it. They know that there's a huge risk in having their users run as local admins with standing admin rights. But they also understand now that they do need admin rights to do things, to be able to be successful in doing their jobs. And taking away their admin rights or making it difficult for them to get it back for the applications that they need, that is defeating the purpose, and it's ultimately hurting the organization as a whole. Because ultimately, if we're talking about the evolution of computer security these days is essentially a risk analysis. And it's essentially, how do I mitigate and minimize the risk? What am I willing to accept? And of the risk that is left, how do I mitigate that? And at the end of the day, we actually are in a world where cyber insurance is fairly mature. And that has been the backstop for all the risks that I cannot control, that I ultimately have to mitigate there. As a follow-up to that, cyber insurance companies are issuing requirements saying, if you want to have an insurance policy from us, and if you want a discount on that policy, here's what you need to do. The most important thing is you need to show us that you actually have a mature cybersecurity practice. And one of the ways that we can see that you have a mature cybersecurity practice is that you've implemented a least privilege solution. So they want to see that there's something in place so that when a user needs admin rights, we have a way of being able to capture that request. And if we provide it to the user, that we have a way of auditing that as well, so that that this information is not invisible, it is transparent, it can be seen, and most importantly, we're not trying to interfere with the user to so that they can go and perform whatever tasks they need to perform. So sorry for that long-winded background, but let me now share my computer.
Sure.
And I want to
bring it onto the studio, and then I
Yep.
can share it out to the stage from there.
Okay.
I do have a question regarding the cyber risk insurance.
Yep.
When they basically ask people, hey, you know what, we need proof that you have at least privilege controls in place. Is it enough to just say, yeah, we've purchased CyberArk's, endpoint privilege management, and we're using that? Or do they need to like give them screenshots of the policies in place inside of the CyberArk platform? And that's like, they know CyberArk products, like these insurance companies know CyberArk products enough that they can tell if it's configured correctly or not. Like, how deep do they go?
So, that's a great question. And I think that in the cyber insurance world, the audits that are happening to ensure that customers have products in place to manage their security risks, I think that is that is continuing to evolve to a more stronger to a more stronger position. Right now, I would hazard to say that the majority of cyber insurance companies are just looking to see if you actually have a product in place, and they're taking your word that you do have it in place in some form of honor system. I have heard of some cyber insurance companies that actually check to see that you actually have the software running. I absolutely can see sometime in the future some type of validation, so that if you want to get insured, sometime in the future, maybe the cyber insurance company will go out and send someone to actually ask if you have done a pen test, or if you have done some type of testing in order to see that you actually have a least privilege solution in place. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I got you queued up here on your screen.
Yep.
So you are sharing your screen live.
Awesome. Okay, so as you can see, I am on a Mac right now, and this particular Mac is running the latest version of Sonoma. But we are backwards compatible all the way down to Big Sur. So as long as you're using Mac version Big Sur or greater, we have no issues with the EPM agent running on those systems. So historically, if a user wants to elevate an application, they need to go and make a request for it. So if a user goes and let's say that they go out and they download a program and they wish to install that program, well, in order to do that, pardon me, I hit the wrong button here. But in order to install the application, they need to have admin rights. So if I wanted to, for example, drag this to the application directory and install it, I wouldn't be able to do that unless I am permitted to do it. So traditionally,
yeah, this is the screen that I remember from Windows. So you give a reason and then you click OK, and it sends off the request, right?
Yep, and it sends off the request. And you can see that Finder is looking for the user to give an admin account to continue on. Because I don't have an admin account, I'm not going to continue on from here. I'll hit cancel, and those requests make it into the EPM console for someone to act on. That has been our classic way of providing elevation. And what we're finding is increasingly, especially in the Mac community, because let's face it, when a company is giving a user a Mac, Macs are not cheap. So they're not going to give a Mac to just anyone. They're going to give Macs typically to power users, executives, and most importantly, people who are developers who will oftentimes need admin rights to do things like install test tools or install applications that require admin rights. So
that's me.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do we make it easier for for those types of situations? Well, one way is to implement a strategy that we already have today that is very mature in the Unix world. If you want to elevate something in Unix, you use the sudo command. And when you use the sudo command, you have to type in your password in order to validate that you are who you say you are. So let's say that I want to install the Python library. So I go ahead and double click on this. The newer approach that we support is instead of having the user make a request, we have flipped the script. We know that you, Mr. Developer, need admin rights, and you need the flexibility to be able to elevate things that you need for work. And we have taken the judgment that you know what you're doing, and we want to make sure that you can continue being productive. So as an alternative to the classic approach, if I want to elevate an application, like let's say to install Python, well, in this approach, I'm asking the user, in this case, Peter, to type in their password. If Peter fat fingers his password, he will not be able to continue and be able to install the application. But if he demonstrates that he is Peter by typing in his password and clicking OK, you will see that we are allowing Peter to continue and install the app.
Interesting.
And, yep. So I'm just going to click OK, and you can see right away I got into the install portion, and now I'm free to install the application. So from the developer's perspective, this is not that difficult of a task. I'm just being asked to certify myself.
Is that Python version then considered approved software as far as EPM is concerned? And so that way, when the administrative privileges are requested, it knows, okay, this is approved software. I can allow this to happen. Is that kind of what's happening on in the background with the rules?
Yep, that's right. And you as a customer we offer you the flexibility. So if you want us to assume that an application that was installed through EPM is trusted, we can do that. And if we do that, then the way that you describe the behavior is exactly how it's going to work. We trust this application. If it needs to update itself, we will allow it to update itself. If it needs admin rights, we will allow it to elevate. But if you didn't want to automatically trust an app that was installed through EPM elevation, you also have that option of configuring the policy to do that too.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah. So what I've just showed you here is the elevation policy that we have so that the user can self-elevate. But the only catch to this is we're just asking the user for one factor, and that's the password.
I noticed. Yeah.
And it's just easy. It's easy for someone to, it has been shown that it's easy to get somebody's password. There are many social engineering tricks that are out there.
I have a job because people can get people's passwords. So I feel you,
right.
Dude.
So the better strategy is to implement a multi-factor authentication. And we do have that today within our system. So EPM will work with any OIDC compliant IDP. That could be Okta, Azure, our own solution, CyberArk Identity, Ping,
there we go.
Duo, you name it. As long as it supports OIDC, there's a way for us to integrate with it. So the latest method of doing elevations today, the one that we're seeing a lot of customers implement because of its ease of use and because it is fairly secure, is to provide the multi-factor elevation. So let's say that Peter wants to go into the keychain and he wants to update his system roots. So when he does that, he tries to unlock the system roots so that he can edit his certs. This is going to bring up a message saying, we will allow him to do this only after he finishes the step-up authentication. This will bring up the web page for the IDP. In my case, this is going to be Peter. Now, I don't recommend this, but I have saved my accounts here for demo purposes just to make it a little easier for me to step through. So Peter's going to sign in, and then I'm going to put in the password, and we're going to use a one-time request in order to authenticate as a second factor. So I'm going to continue on, It's going to ask me for the second factor. I'm going to pull this up from my system and typing in the code and authenticate. So once the authentication is successful, you can see the message flash that we're in.
Yep.
And when I go back to the keychain access, it is now unlocked. And if I needed to go in and make a change or do something with one of my certs, I absolutely can make that change now.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that.
Yep.
If let's say, if you were to lock the keychain access,
Yep.
and then unlock it again, would you need to re-authenticate, or does it cache the MFA?
So it does cache the MFA here. If I unlock it without closing the application and I decide to, if I locked it, it did not close the application and I unlock it, it will unlock automatically. If I close the application, I would have to start the MFA process again.
Oh, that's awesome. So the session persists with identity so that you have now multi-factor authenticated. We're not going to ask you a billion times to continuously do it until either you close out the thing that EPM allowed you to essentially escalate, or I would imagine if you left this open, which I would hope you wouldn't leave keychain access just willy-nilly, sitting on an unlocked desktop, but let's say you did for whatever reason, there is an expiration on the user. So eventually, right after 15, 20 minutes or so, that user session would require the MFA to be done from the identity side. It's nothing EPM related. So
yep, that's absolutely right.
That's really cool.
You could configure a timeout for this on the identity side.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. This is cool, dude.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. The developer community loves this because this change basically allows developers to self-service themselves. We get out of the way. We get out of their way so that they can do their job. And developers are not unreasonable people. They understand the risks involved, especially because they are developers. They truly understand what are vulnerabilities and what are the risks involved in the different computers and the different applications that they use. But good employees, they want to be able to get their work done. They want to be able to be productive. This allows them to do so with a minimum of interruption. And by the nature of how this works, it will pass a cybersecurity audit. We are complying to the letter of what the insurance companies are looking for. They want a way to make sure that users do not automatically get admin rights. They have to validate that they are who they say they are before they're given the rights.
I have obviously, right. I think by nature of what I do, I talk to a lot of developers on a daily basis. So the question from the security teams of how to secure the developers, it comes up a lot, and it's something that I've looked into myself just to try to come up with answers to questions that people typically have for me. And one of those questions is, how to secure developers before they even promote their code to any sort of environment whatsoever, right? Like there is a period of time where a developer has literally just put their fingers on the keyboard and started typing source code for the first time, and they're building it locally on a MacBook, right? For example, typically it's a MacBook if they get their way, which typically they do. But that's how it starts. And so I get a lot of questions a lot with in development, in non-prod and prod, we're going to have Conjur as our secrets manager, but we're really struggling with, do we have the developers access Conjur, or what do the developers use for when they're on their local machine and they're just starting off and they happen to have some secrets, that their application needs to handle initially. And it's a great question because really, right, we're enterprise software here. So we're really attacking things at a larger scale than a single developer would really need to deal with. And even further to that point, right, like the experience with Conjur is more driven towards, automated machine type identities, not so much the human user experience that the developer would be wanting to take an angle at. And the concept that I came up, and I'm so happy that you showed us step up authentication with keychain access, because that's literally what I tell the developers to use. I say, look, every operating system has a credential store in the operating system. For Mac OS, it's keychain access. For Microsoft, it's Windows Credential Manager. For Linux, like Ubuntu, it's the GNOME wallet, there's K wallet, there's Keyring, right? There's all these different things in Linux depending on the flavor you go with. But at the end of the day, those are available on literally every one of those operating systems that are deployed. So why not use them as a developer's initial secret store? And then we have open source solutions like Summon, which can fetch the secrets just in time from those OS credential stores and provide them to their applications locally as they're running locally to do their testing and debugging. And then, because of the way that Summon generically understands how to connect to fetch these secrets, that doesn't change as you change out where the secrets are coming from. So I can take away keychain access and I can add in Conjure, and Summon is still going to be acting the same way. All of the files that Summon uses to understand where to get the secrets from are the same. The only thing that's changing is the backend that the secrets are coming from. So from a developer's perspective, we are really starting, at the inception of their source code, securing them starting at the endpoint level, eventually moving to a server and more, cloud native level as we get closer and closer to the cloud through dev, through non-prod, through prod. And this is something I've been talking about for a couple years. So to see this and to hear that the feedback from developers has been positive just reinforces a lot of the things that I've been trying to talk to, these people out in the world that are struggling with what to do with this initial, secret that they have. That, yeah, sure, it's just a dev secret, but I still don't want to accidentally leak it to Stack Overflow or GitHub or GitLab or out to the public somehow. They still want to introduce security, they just don't know how. And so I think EPM is really giving security the opportunity to start having these conversations, and it's not impeding the user experience from the developer's perspective to where they're already putting up a stop sign and saying, no, security, get out of here, you're hurting me. They're actually embracing security now, which changes that conversation later we can have with them. I really love this, Fran, and I appreciate you showing all of us this.
Yeah, and it's nice to have this conversation with you because I learned something new. I had no idea that someone could actually tap directly in the keychain. Because if it does, that is wonderful, because then your developers could store their secure notes and passwords in their own keychain and have it delivered as part of their app prototype.
Yep. I keep my AWS CLI access key ID and secret key and keychain access. And then anytime I type AWS in my terminal, there's an alias in my bash RC that is set to AWS. And so instead it'll run summon first to grab the access keys from the keychain, and then it'll inject it into the AWS CLI. So I never need to authenticate. They're not in plain text somewhere on my local file system. Just in time, they're being added to the calls. So I've got a lot of talks built around this. I don't think it's we could spend the rest of the hour on this. I'm not going to get into it, but maybe, in an upcoming YouTube video, I'll kind of create a video around the whole thing and show off how I use Summon. And then maybe in a follow-up, I can bring you on and we can kind of introduce EPM to the equation and talk about securing the developers from that level. That would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
While we're on the developers talk, there is another aspect of developers day-to-day that could require them to log into servers. And so, when they need to do this, typically it's to it depends on the environment, right? If they're logging into a dev environment server, probably because they need to work on their application there, right? Like they have a little bit more access in dev environments, but as we start to move towards more production servers and things like that, it gets very tricky to allow developers access to troubleshoot their applications in that production environment. And so it's very important to really only ever grant them read-only access. And
Mhm.
so I'm wondering if there's something that EPM can provide in addition to, securing the developer's endpoint, but also the servers that maybe they need to access to do some sort of troubleshooting or escalate privileges within there.
Yeah. So, it's funny that you mentioned that because, we when we started this conversation, we started by talking about, I guess, the evolution of security and how we've been old timers in this field for a while. And I remember in the beginning, you remember this too, like the idea of putting a password vault directly on the internet is heresy, sheer heresy. Nobody in their right mind would ever
I
want to
know.
do that. But look at how it's changed and
I know.
how the entire industry has changed. And because what has dramatically changed has been the introduction of SaaS as the preferred platform.
Mhm.
Now, yeah, I could actually argue to you that our password vault in Privilege Cloud, in our SaaS hosted environment on AWS, is even more secure than anything a customer could actually do themselves. Because within our own backend, we are using a real HSM. Most customers cannot afford an actual hardware security module to store their initial secrets.
Mhm.
But we are leveraging that across all of our customers. We have password rotation in full effect with our own tool. We eat our own dog food. We
Yeah.
secure our own environment by installing EPM and making sure that we are monitoring what we are allowing users to elevate. But when it comes to the server world, historically, the way that it worked in servers is that a user would go and log into a server as a full admin because they
Mhm.
needed that admin account in order to do whatever they wanted to do. With the introduction of cloud environments, um, and the fact that your server's out there in the open on the internet, the idea of landing on a machine with a full-fledged account doesn't sound so sexy anymore. And so what's changed is this notion of zero standing privilege and zero standing trust. So instead of logging into a machine as a full-fledged admin, whether you do it through a session that CyberArk provides or you do it through an account that you know that happens to be an admin, let's change the approach. The new flow, the one that we recommend now, is you log into a endpoint like a server with
Mhm.
zero standing privileges with a regular user. And once you land there, what you are allowed to elevate and do is dependent on what policies that you have set forth in EPM. So EPM is the enforcement arm of zero standing privilege. And
Uh-huh.
our newer technologies like dynamic privilege access, which is, I know that this may not be the official way of describing it, but I like to call it, um, um, uh, I like to call it session management without the need of using a um, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I'm sorry. Session management without the need of deploying an RDS infrastructure, because
Yeah.
that had to have been the biggest complaint about our software before, using remote desktop services to do anything. DPA does not need RDS in order to make the connection. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to share my screen, and I am connected here to my desktop. And on this desktop, I'm going to log into CyberArk Identity. And when I log in, I will have a chance to go and make a session connection to one of my servers. So here, I'm going to type in my password. And I need to complete an OTP, which I have.
So just so everyone who is watching, whether it's on demand or not, doesn't matter. What Fran is about to show us involves the dynamic privileged access, which we covered with Mike Bycat about 2 Ask Joe Anythings ago. So 2 months ago, the Ask Joe Anything with Mike Bycat, we really dive into secure cloud access, dynamic privileged access, and so Fran, this is awesome because our regular viewers have seen kind of how DPA works. So to see it working in tandem with EPM, I think is something that they haven't had an opportunity to see. So this is great. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I've landed in DPA and I am logged in as my own account. I am just a regular user in dynamic privilege access. I'm going to connect now to my target system, and so I'm going to type in my target system's name. And of course, I forgot the name of the server. I just drew a blank, so give me a second.
Let
me get it real quick.
Sure. Security EXP's out in Twitch. He loves
what's
the
that?
use case.
Oh, okay.
That's the user's name out in Twitch. I know this is kind of like one of the first times I'm doing. The last one was James from LinkedIn, so you know exactly who he is. But just really backing you up on the use case and stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I remember he asked the question about Postman. We actually don't prevent the user from using Postman. We just we internally discourage it because we don't want.
I know why he's asking this question.
Go ahead.
Because I manage the Postman collection that's available to I put a note on there saying that I'm not going to keep it up anymore. I'm not going to continue to update it. It's because I'm not allowed to have Postman on my CyberArk stuff anymore. So because of that, my attention has turned to working with our technical writers in getting our newest API website, api-docs.cyberark.com, to ingest all of the Postman collections that I've created into our new system. And it's going to create open API specification files and API documentation similar to Swagger for everyone to be able to experience our services APIs. And then you'll be able to take those open API specs and put them in any API client you want. So if you want to continue using Postman, go for it. You'll import the open API spec from our website. And we're very close to getting this public and out to everyone. We just need a little bit more time here. So that's really where my focus has gone. It's not that, CyberArk is not supporting Postman anymore. Like Postman as an API client, anyone can use. It's just internally, because of the way that it requires everything that you do to be cloud connected, we don't feel comfortable with secrets and tokens related to our platform and some of our internal IP potentially ending up in their cloud. And so we made the decision as a company, just put the kibosh on it, and we're using Bruno, which is another API client that's similar to Postman. And there's some people internally as well using Hopscotch in an offline scenario. So if you happen to run into that issue at your company, there's a couple solutions out there that might work. So I apologize. You brought it up, Fran. I was going to save it, but I figured I'd touch on that and then we can continue on.
Yep, all good. So here we are again. I put in the server that I want to connect to. And now I'm going to connect through an RDP file. It will generate the RDP file that I will use to make the connection. And I'm simply waiting for it to let me save it. Okay, and then when I click on it, this will then allow me to land as a zero standing.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Hold on. Wait.
Yeah.
I forgot that. So your screen disconnected from the studio. I need to add it back. Sorry.
Okay.
There we go. I've got it up now. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Just start over from where you started from, and I think it should be good. But
got it. Okay. So you can see that I am connecting right now, and I am going to, after I log in, I'm going to close my connection and try to log back in again. Okay. Right, so let's try that again. RDP file.
Oh, you're using Pineapple Dev. Look at you, dude.
Yep.
One of us. One of us.
Why rebuild the wheel, right? When you can use the existing infrastructure.
It's true.
Yep. So now I'm making a connection, and I'm connecting as a normal user that has been dynamically created for me.
Ah, look at that name.
Yep.
That does look dynamically created specifically by CyberArk.
Yep. And I do believe that there's an option too, where if you wanted users to land with a particular account, that's possible as well.
It you know what it reminds me of is if you've ever taken a look at a PSM server that has shadow users still on it,
Yes.
it looked like one of those actually. That's pretty cool actually.
Yeah. So now I have landed on the server, and let me show you first that I am. Who am I? I am a normal user. Okay. Let me do this way. I'm going to go into computer management, and in computer management, I will be able to show you that I am a normal user. The Fran account that I have here is a member of just the remote desktop users groups and a member of the admin group coming from DPA. Yeah. But this group is not part of my local administrator group.
Right.
So when I go into my groups here and go into the administrators, the DPA admins is not a group that's actually used for administration. You can see the administrative groups that I have. So I don't have admin rights on this machine, and I've landed as my my regular account. Now, having said that, I can elevate things provided that I have permission to do that. So I have given myself the ability to elevate command prompt if I wanted to do that. To do it, I can run this as administrator, and EPM is just going to simply ask me, you know, why am I doing this? I'm going to say this is just for one time and click OK. And I am right there in my administrative command prompt, and I'm able to run anything that I want as an admin there. Now, so one of the advantages that I have in this approach is, you know, one of the biggest fears that or concerns that customers have with our current session approach, when a user lands as an admin, there's always a chance that they can go in and create a new account for themselves, or what's to stop them from changing the password of an existing admin account so that they could take advantage of it. Well, with the zero standing trust that we have with the user, they don't have the rights to begin with to make those changes to the user accounts. So this helps to continue. This helps to continue to secure the environment by not allowing the user to get elevated rights for things that we don't want them to have. Like, we don't want the user to be able to create new accounts on the machine. We don't want them to be able to change the passwords of existing admin accounts. And that is what EPM does here. But if you need to elevate something, we can provide them the ability to do that elevation. And typically they need elevation in order to run something as admin or to install something on a machine, as an example. Yep.
So that's for that's a Windows server. Does this also work for like Linux servers as well? Or is this mainly for Windows-based servers?
It will work for Windows and for Linux.
Oh, cool.
And it really boils down to it really boils down to the operating systems that we support from a DPA standpoint. So whatever normal account that you would like to land on a machine, whether it's Linux through SSH, a connection to a database, or to Kubernetes. Well, actually, you know, because EPM is an operating system-based agent, it would be SSH here. So if you made an SSH connection to a Linux machine, you would land as a regular user that's not a member of any admin group. But EPM could give the user the ability to run sudo commands as though they were admin for whatever commands that you wish to allow the user to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that, man. I so Secure Cloud Access does a great job with zero standing privileges for when human users are accessing the cloud consoles.
Yep.
But I did not know that this existed with EPM. So I have learned something new today. And I tend to talk to developers that are in the cloud. So naturally, I'm talking about, dynamic privileged access. Not not alone, obviously. I'm talking about just in time access to the cloud. But this is really, really good to know because it kind of solves it from both angles, right? Like, hey, do you need zero standing privileges to access the management console or a resource, right? Like
Mhm.
we've got you covered from both
Yep.
angles.
Yep.
Uh, that's great. I really like that. Let's maybe take a couple questions from people. We'll kind of pivot over there.
Yep.
We've gotten a couple already that we can kind of touch on and talk about. Anybody who's out there on Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, feel free to ask your questions. If you have any, they don't need to be on Endpoint Privilege Security. They can be on absolutely anything. You can ask us whether we like peanut butter or jelly or both, with Jared Brodsky, or you can ask Fran questions about spearfishing if you're an avid fisher yourself, or CyberArk related stuff, which is actually what we're here to talk about. But
I was just going to mention, Joe, it's funny when you bring up spearfishing. I never told you the reason why I got into spearfishing. You want to know why I got into spearfishing?
yes, I do. While people ask their questions, we will listen to this story.
Okay. Because number one, I love fish. I think fish is very tasty. And number two, I am a lousy fisherman. I cannot catch anything with a
Really?
line.
Like with a pole, you can't do it. So you just
I have,
decide you're going to go and do it with your hands.
yeah, I have horrible luck when it comes to actually catching fish with a rod and reel. For some reason, they're on to me. The fish is like, there's something about this bait I don't like. I'm not going to go and eat it. But under the water, I can find whatever fish I want, and I usually will have a chance to bring it back up to shore with me. And I love that.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
love the fact that I only keep what I want, as opposed to having to worry about bringing a fish on. Maybe it's been bad hooked. I don't know how well it's going to live. You know?
Yeah, there's this guy in Punta Gorda that's a content creator that I follow on Instagram, and he's always posting videos of like just the craziest ways to catch things. He lives off a canal, like on the ocean basically. And
Yeah.
he goes out there in this most recent video, and he's got from Publix just like some chicken drumsticks and a fishing line,
Oh my
and
God.
he took his fishing line, tied it
Yeah.
around the drumstick, tosses it out into the water,
Sounds like he's looking
takes
for
the other
gators.
end, ties it around the like this little just bolt that was sticking out of his dock, tied it around there,
Hmm.
went inside, came back an hour later. It was the line was tight. And so he puts in a net and then starts slowly, just very slowly and methodical, keeping it tight, bringing it in. And he gets to the point where I guess it's close to him, and he scoops it up with the net. The biggest blue crab you've ever seen was attached to the
Oh my
chicken
God.
drumstick. And I guess what this guy does is anytime that he feels like having blue crab for dinner, he starts
Uh-huh.
in the morning, and every hour he's basically dragging in a blue crab for dinner just with a
So
single drumstick. So he'll tie up like a whole package of like 10 of them or whatever, and he'll just be fishing off of chicken drumsticks that are raw, like just tossed out into the water. It's crazy.
I learned something new. I had
Totally
no
off
idea that
topic, but why not,
I had no idea that you actually had blue crabs in Florida. I thought that
Yeah.
Florida only had stone crabs.
Nope. We've got blue crabs, we've got stone crabs, we've got rock shrimp, which are basically like, mini little Florida lobsters. They're
Yep.
amazing, but they go
Yep.
for very cheap. I don't know why people don't charge more because they're really good.
They're tasty. I agree.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, man. My kids like are finally discovering seafood, which is just amazing for me because for the longest time, it was just me in the house that enjoyed seafood. So I never really ate it because otherwise I need to eat it all.
No.
And I discovered hot pot recently and I took them out to a buffet.
Yep.
And my daughter went immediately to the raw bar and took took squid, took octopus, green mussels, clams. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you better eat all this because I got to pay for it if you don't, like there's a charge at the end for what you don't eat. And I tell you what, man, she ate all of it. She loved it. And I thought it was a fluke. We went back for my birthday. Same thing all over again. I'm like, I guess this is it. Like this, she is into seafood now. Like I've never touched oysters, mussels, clams. Like that's not something, but she's like all about it now. It's really cool. It's a really exciting time for me that I get to, share all of these awesome and exotic things with the kids. But anyways, let's answer some of these people's questions and see what's out there. I'll answer a couple, you answer a couple. Let's kind of backtrack a bit to James Kramer a little bit earlier, talking about cyber insurance policy underwriting. I don't know much about cyber risk insurance, to be honest with you. It's not necessarily something that my line of things runs into a lot. I do appreciate it because I come from a financial background, right? Before I came to CyberArk. So audit, governance, risk compliance, all huge in my world. And I feel like they get ignored a lot. So, the fact that cyber risk insurance is a thing now, bringing this back to the forefront, I think is awesome. But do you have anything to add on to what James had mentioned here a little bit earlier on?
Yeah, I couldn't say this any better. That originally, cyber insurance basically was based on an honor system, but that has quickly evolved. And at this point in time, when you are going through cyber insurance, I know that a lot of these agencies, they will go through a checklist and make sure that you have what you or purport to have, and they sometimes will go in and do a software audit to see as well. I totally see this evolving to a position where eventually they're going to check to see if you actually have active systems in place and they are doing what you're saying they're doing. I could actually see that tied hand in hand with a official pen test that your organization has to go through and pass. How do you manage what you can't measure? You got to find a way to be able to measure, and the best way to measure is through testing.
Is this something that organizations have to worry about now on top of, the audit requirements that they need to deal with third parties and things as well? Or do those sometimes go hand in hand, and as you're satisfying audit requirements and proving those, it kind of goes towards your cyber risk insurance as well? Do you know at all? I really have no experience with this and I'm interested in learning more.
I know that with the evolution of cyber insurance, back when computer security started, security was more of an absolute. You had to try to secure your systems, you had to harden them, and there wasn't really an insurance policy per se. So if you got breached, you really were on your own. Or if you were in a situation where you had an operational requirement that forced you into doing something in a less than secure way, there's no way for you to be able to compensate for it. And I really do believe that the cyber insurance space came about as a result of a real need that corporate America does have, to be able to put together some type of realistic protection in place where, as much as possible, let's try to secure your environment as much as we can. And for the things that we can't because of some operational or business reason, we can mitigate those risks with cyber insurance. And that's where cyber insurance has come into play.
If we think back to like the auto industry a bit, like I'm talking back, right? And the introduction of like auto insurance.
Absolutely.
Auto insurance really changed the automobile industry from a safety perspective a lot, even though we hate it today because we have to pay it and we may never get into an accident or whatever. Like early on, it really affected like car seats, for example, never existed, right? Until, hey, people are getting ejected from their cars and it's very dangerous and we don't want to have to pay these people. So maybe we should lobby for laws in place to buckle your seatbelt,
Yep.
things like that. But I hope, and it seems to be going that way, that cyber risk insurance will do the same for our industry that auto insurance did for the automobile industry, specifically for the consumer, protecting the consumer, the safety of the consumer. Only in our case, it's more right the security and protection of the intellectual property, the privilege and all of the keys of the kingdom that these organizations have, whether that is a token, a secret, or maybe it is something a little bit more tangible, like whatever they may be invested in, right? Like, I don't know, like manufacturing type stuff. I don't know, NASA, maybe you got a rocket ship or something, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be a secret, but a lot of risk involved with all of that. If you were to ever not protect that IP, right?
Yep.
A nation state actor could gain the rocket ship plans, and now you're playing from behind. And
Yep.
it's pretty cool. It seems like it's already making a shift. I remember my experience with the evolving nature of these types of situations comes from when I was answering audit requirements in the financial industry as a vault administrator of CyberArk. It was crazy to see year after year as the auditors came back to look more and more into what we were doing with CyberArk. They were becoming more knowledgeable themselves. It started with like, yeah, here's a screenshot of the safe. The secret's in there. Here you go.
Yep.
That's really all they require. Then they come back the next year and they're like, all right, we need to see the permissions on the safe and who has access to it. Oh, okay. I can give you. Next year, it's like, all right, now we need to see the activity history report and the entitlements report from within CyberArk, and we'll be able to parse it. And it's like, hold on, like now you have me pull down full reports from CyberArk and you can parse through the information yourself and figure it out. Like, that's a pretty big leap from like, just take a screenshot of some safe members here on the safe so we can make sure that it's, got the right people getting access and it's all attested for, to, hey, give us all your reports now that CyberArk can definitely generate for you, because like we're pretty involved with CyberArk now and we understand everything we need. I imagine that CRI is going to eventually get to that point. And it sounds like it is, kind of, snail crawling its way down that path.
In all the possible worlds that we could possibly live in, the relationship that cyber insurance has with security practitioners and computer security providers, we are in an ideal state right now where it's a true partnership, where they're trying to learn how our systems operate so that they can audit the tools better and provide better guidance back to the customer if they're doing things correctly or not. I don't know if you remember, but when cyber insurance came out a couple of years ago, there was legitimate concern coming from the security and from the computer security industry that cyber insurance was going to allow companies to continue with stupid practices. Because the theory was, now that I have insurance, why do I need to secure my environment? If somebody comes in and steals all my assets, well, I get a big payout and that's that.
That's exactly what happened though at the beginning. That's what these companies were doing. They were using the insurance to cover their, like, I've got to pay millions of dollars in stamps to notify all of my customers that I was just breached. Where's my, I guess I got insurance for that, but it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah, but
you got to at least try.
Very quickly, cyber insurance companies realized that, they have to manage their risk too. They absolutely have to manage their risk. And the best way to manage that risk is, okay, Mr. Customer, you're coming to me and you want an insurance policy. I want to see that you're actually healthy before I insure you. You know? And so
it's definitely, you can see them learning their lessons as as the years go on, and they come back with like a new, a little bit more information, right? A little bit better resources, a little bit knowledgeable people, and they're gradually getting there. And when they do, it'll probably be too late, to be honest with you, but that's just the nature of the high speed world of technology.
Absolutely.
they're going to constantly be changing and trying to catch up to this, us, and we're going to be light years ahead for the most part, but it's definitely better than not having anything enforced at all. So,
yep. And we
if
are
there's that little gap there, we just got to deal with it.
In the relationship that we have today with cyber insurance, this is the best type of relationship that we could actually have. It never played out where cyber insurance made companies not want to invest in security products. If anything, cyber insurance is helping to drive the adoption of security products so that they can get better premiums on their insurance.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Let's see what other questions we have. Oh, James followed up. It's 100% not allowing them to continue to do that. Cyber insurance policy providers took a big hit over the last few years because of the payouts.
No.
So they're getting much more advanced fast. That's great news. So James is hearing the same thing. James also, by the way, right, coming back to promote some awesome things happening at CyberArk Impact will be on our panels. So if you have any other questions pertaining to strategy or program development, cyber risk insurance, right? Bring them all to Impact. James will be on the panel. You can direct your question to him, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer your question. But back to the point that we're trying to make here with James. A little quick plug, if you don't mind there, Fran. But yeah, so we agree with you, James. You're right, as if you didn't know.
And it's going to be a pleasure to have us all together for the talk at Impact too.
It will be fun. I am a little anxious myself, which really doesn't happen, but it'll get better. It'll go away as it gets closer. I get anxious over planning. And then once the planning's done, that's where I kind of smooth sail into the event.
Yes.
But I mean, you've been involved in some of the internal meetings I've been having. Like I don't know if you can tell, but I'm semi freaking out a little bit about this whole, panel scenario. It's definitely been a learning experience on the fly. And I think I'll have a better approach coming into the next one, but, trying to figure it out, with this session has been, yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I've been ripping my hair out over it, but fortunately, I think the last meeting we had, we came to a good agreement as to an approach, and I think it's going to really work out well for everyone. And it helped me to just put into perspective the amount of time we actually have. We've got 6 panelists. We've got 20 minutes for the panel discussion. I really just want to get to the question and answer portion for everyone in the audience to be able to ask their questions and get the answers that they're looking for. But the panel portion and and the flow of that and stuff is still giving me a little bit of the butterflies in my stomach. But once we get that all situated, probably within the next couple weeks, and then we'll cruise in into Impact.
And it's nice that you're starting the panel with having good people too. Like everyone that's in our panel, they're all
nobody told me no, so I was happy about that. I was happy about that. It's honestly, if we get on stage and it falls, there's no way it can fall flat, because at any time I can be like, you know what, Q&A, let's go, and then we flip this Q&A. Like, what? They're gonna kick me off stage? Come on now, guys. Like, they're gonna have one of those big hooks, and they're gonna come in from the side and drag me off.
Well, Joe, what if? Can you imagine if you could wave a magic wand? I would like Kara Swisher to be the MC of this and go and ask us questions and be able to,
I would gladly join the panel. I would stay through lunch for it to continue. Like, that would be really cool.
Because
but a little too late to be planning that, unfortunately, but that would be really cool.
Because in Kara's latest book, the privacy concerns that she brings up, things that companies are wanting to do with your data, that is the very same reason why we are not encouraging people to go use tools like Postman. You should be that, and I'm trying to remember the name of the other product, but you need to really pay attention to the data that you're sending over. And one of the nice things that we do as a company is that we do disclose what exactly we use our data for. We have a page in our documentation that talks about the telemetry data that we use in EPM, and we disclose what it is that we capture and what we use it for. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? There was something that I did want to look into. I'm going to actually just share out my screen.
Okay.
On CyberArk.com, demos and trials. Is EPM still a try and buy?
Yes, it is still a trial and buy, and a customer can go ahead and set up the trial themselves. Yep. And go ahead and click on the link in order to establish it. We do recommend, full disclosure, we are not at a state where a customer can, from start to finish, complete an entire trial by themselves and look at our content. We absolutely want to assist you so that you can be successful in your trial. So if you do go and set up for a trial, we certainly would want you to get in contact with one of the EPM SMEs so that we can help you get everything set up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't want to do this. No, I have tried the free trial before, myself, personally, because I was trying to evaluate it being installed on my son's computer and enforcing policies on him. It was a little overkill for what I was trying to do with him, so I kind of let the free trial expire. But I do remember it was essentially self-service. Like it's there, like you get access to it. You don't need to necessarily talk to anybody to get in there. But yeah, I guess if I'm evaluating this as something I want to purchase for an organization, it might make sense to have an expert on the phone to kind of walk me through things like quick start policies and stuff like that to help me kind of figure out, how to implement those. I think that we have some new ones coming out here soon, don't we?
We sure do. So, and this is the value that we bring to the table with these free trials. So it's not available in the trial just yet, but we have a release candidate for our Mac quick start policies. And I have them available to share so I can cover them. They will be in our production release next month.
Okay.
So with that in mind, let me show you what the...
Are you going to be showing these at Impact as well? Or is this something that will be on display there?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. So in Impact, we will have the ability to show you these policies too. I have imported the release candidate policies here. These are the ones that are related to the Mac Quick Start. So like all of our other Quick Start policies, we have them in layers. Layer 1 is meant to be an exception to layer 2 block policies. So I block applications in layer 2, but if for some reason somebody needs them, and maybe it's a certain role that needs them, I can exempt them in layer 1 and they will not get blocked. The blocking components, I think, are special because with our quick start policies that we have on the Mac side, we now have out-of-the-box content that we can share. We've gone out and talked to different customers. We've seen what the industry is doing, and we've come up with policies to block certain applications, block certain kinds of attacks. Like we know that there's a whole class of attacks that are out there called living off the orchard, which is the same thing as living off the land on the Windows side.
So what's the difference between the orchard, because it's Apple? I get it. Never mind.
That's right. Exactly. So we know, for example, there are a number of tools that are out there that are commonly on a Mac that can be subject to abuse especially when you have a bad actor trying to persist and they're using what they can on the system. So we're watching for those types of patterns. Things like a user running the DS cache util to try to dump the actual directory contents off the machine, or to do a DS export, or some of the other tools that we have here, we may not necessarily want to block outright because we're talking about developers here as well. And in the developer use case, maybe there is a need for them to be able to use the kernel extension status tool. That's perfectly fine, but at the very least, we can record when those tools are used, feed them to a SIM, let the automation capability of a SIM product handle the research to determine if the behavior that they're seeing is something that needs to be alerted to or not. But you can see that we have a number of applications that we have defined for living off the orchard. And additionally, in our policies, we have applications that are defined so that if I see a program like the Apple script application, and it gets launched by a product that is defined in my content handler group, what is a content handler? A content handler is an application that has the ability to launch a script. These are typically things like your Office applications or your web browsers, anything that can spawn an application that can then, or spawn an app or a document that can then generate or launch a script. We want to be mindful of and we want to watch for it, because those are the things that could potentially cause problems, and we would want to be able to put a stop to it. So when I go into my content handler, and maybe, here, this is where I've defined it. So any application that was signed by Microsoft and has the bundle ID of Word. So it's basically Word, Outlook, Teams, PowerPoint, and a number of other apps that you see here. We know that these apps are susceptible to attack. And if someone were to try to attack you, they're going to try to get you to launch a malicious script. And that's the point behind this blocked application policy. We want to stop these scripts from being launched from these applications. There's no real reason to. In some corner cases, maybe you have an Excel spreadsheet that uses a lot of macros, and you may want to exempt some of those macros. That's fine, but we don't necessarily want to do that for every product that you have out there. This certainly improves the security of your organization if you implement this.
That's cool, dude. And then we have, do we have quick start policies for, I know we have them for Windows, and now we're going to have it for Mac OS. Do we cover Linux as well?
So Linux is an interesting case. On one hand, I could see the value of having out-of-the-box policies for sudo, but on the flip side of it too, organizations that have Linux already have pre-configured sudo files that that specify what a user is allowed to do. One of the values that the Linux agent has is that we can leverage your existing sudo environment. So instead of rebuilding the wheel, if you've already defined what people are entitled to run under sudo, we are backwards compatible with that. We can continue to support that. So you don't have to make any changes when you go and start using EPM to provide centralized sudo management for Linux systems.
You know, there was something I saw the other day, and I wonder if you've heard anything about it. But it's a sudo replacement that is being introduced into Linux. And the joke that I saw on Twitter was basically like, you know, Windows finally adds sudo to their operating system, and now Linux is removing it from the kernel. So it's like, basically, we finally got Windows on board. All right, let's get out of the party. You know what I mean? And what they're talking about, it's being replaced with, is something called Run Zero. Have you heard anything about that yet? It's pretty new news, so I don't know that it's really hit your radar yet. But it basically serves the same similar purpose as sudo, but the caveat is that you're not actually assuming a credential an account that exists on the operating system, like root, right? To where you can get more context through root using sudo. It is really just for escalating for, temporarily for a specific command to be run. And that way you don't take on the entire context of, the root account, essentially.
I see. So
Yeah,
it's supposed to give
I
you.
didn't know if you had heard anything about it at all, or if it sounds like to me
No.
like I think we do kind of like we can restrict commands essentially, right?
Yep.
That can be utilized and stuff like that. I I mean, I wonder how this really helps to solve some of the issues that surround utilizing sudo as an escalation path. That EPM is great to be alongside of to kind of keep within compliance and constrain what sudo can
Mhm.
do. But I'm interested, I guess, and we'll find out as time goes on and we learn more about Run Zero and how it's actually used in practicality in enterprises, because we still don't know yet. Like, are
Yep.
enterprises actually going to implement this? Like, how will it scale? How will it work in day-to-day tasks? Like, great, it's in the kernel, but are people going to actually use it? It'll be interesting to see uh, how it actually gets accepted in organizations, and then how it's found to be abused as well, because I'm sure that a lot of people are going to first try to do that. So
Yeah. Well,
it'll
you
be
know, I
interesting to see like what we can do in coordination with Run Zero, right, being prevalent in the Linux kernel now, as a potential alternative to what we only had before in sudo.
I would imagine that with any other type of privilege elevation type system, whether it's sudo or something like Run Zero, you need the infrastructure in place. Meaning, you need to have the configuration files, you need to have the definitions, you need to have a lot of content together.
Yeah.
Sudo has been around since practically the existence of the Unix operating system. So it's a very mature product. It has a very mature cycle. I rarely, it's been eons since I've heard of any kind of vulnerability that exists in the sudo
Yeah.
implementation. Anything
That
that's going to replace sudo will have to pass all that scrutiny and validation. And plus, who is going to write the content so that it is, who's going to write the out of the box content for Run Zero
yeah.
so that an implementation will go smoothly, you know?
Yeah, the I highlighted really what I love about it, and I can
Yeah.
even blow it up some, but like just the fact that it's isolating the authentication, from the terminal, I think is huge, because you know,
Ah,
history is there, and you can pull history, and things can be leaked, through just what
yep,
you're typing into a command prompt or a terminal. And so any opportunity to isolate authentication away from the terminal, I think, is a win in terms of
yep.
security. Even if it just did this, that's more than enough for me to give it a shot and try to utilize it. But yeah, man, it's going to take a lot of a whole lot of change, not just from our perspective or an enterprise's perspective, but even the automation tools that enterprises use that rely on becoming an escalated privilege. I'm thinking specifically Ansible, right? And will Ansible accept Run Zero as a method of escalation, and how will it handle that? Will it surpass, sudo? I don't know. Brand new. Figured
Yep.
I'd bring it up so that we're all aware of it, and then we can kind of, check back in on does it even matter, right? As time goes on, and see if people pick it up and run with it or not. But uh the
Yeah,
sudo conversation definitely had me thinking about that. I saw the other day. So
it definitely remains to be seen how that is going to play out.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. We got about like 9 minutes left until the top of the hour. I'm going to go ahead and I think we've got one more question here from Twitch from Security EXP. I'm going to assume that that means expert. So you are an expert, my dude. He's kind of referencing back to when you were showing the demonstration of
Mhm.
server access and you were utilizing DPA in order to log into the Windows server. There was that DPA admin local
Yeah.
group on the server. And so his question came in at the time that you were showing that DPA admin group.
Yep.
And so I'm sure that Mike Bycat would have a great explanation for this. I didn't know if you necessarily were able to answer this. I don't know the answer personally, but I can always run and ask Mike and then follow up
Well,
separately with this person.
I'm trying to understand, I guess the major concern here, because persistent privilege groups exist across all operating systems. In the world of Windows, you have the default administrator group. In the world of Linux, you have the default root group and wheel group. In the world of Mac, you have the default admin group. All of them confer admin rights upon the user. That in itself is not necessarily a breach of security in any way. Managing and making sure that you have the right users in those groups, that's what counts. And that is what EPM can do with our whitelisting policy for the local administrator groups. So we have in EPM the ability of defining a whitelist of who is allowed to be in these privileged groups. And if you're not on that list, EPM will pull that account out of that list. And it's a very effective control, because if a person tries to add a new user who is a new admin, we're going to pull that user out of the admin group so that they do not have any admin rights.
Well, I have a follow-up here. Can you explain what the DPA admin group's purpose is on the server? Is it just like similar to a remote desktop users group that DPA happens to be adding the usernames that it creates just in time into so that you can remote desktop in then, and that's really all it does?
I think it's actually something more along the lines of DPA. The DPA admin group in DPA, it represents my account that I am a DPA admin, and not necessarily that it's the user is an admin on the endpoint. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. So it's completely unrelated.
It's not related. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, and in the demo, if you were to go back, you could see very clearly that group does not exist as a
no, it's not in the administrators group at all, which is where they would. I think it would be, if I remember correctly. I'm gonna think back to my my audit days. It's administrators, power users, remote desktop users, because they like to look in there for service accounts because they should be non-interactive, right? And then oh gosh, there was one more, and I can't remember if it was a built-in group or one that my organization that I work for
backup
added.
operators.
Backup operators, yeah. But the big one though that was getting huge as I was moving to CyberArk was specifically the interactive login that service accounts had. We were undergoing a major project because auditors were starting to ding us for that. And we had to start to disable interactive logon for service accounts, which we found out, hey, a lot of these service accounts actually require that interactive authentication, and maybe we should figure out why. So it always turns into, one of those scenarios and stuff.
So I'm sharing my screen because I just wanted to go into our policies. This is worth mentioning. We have a whole collection of policies in EPM that deal specifically with protecting the system against the credential theft attack. And it doesn't matter to us if the attacker is an admin or a regular user. We have the ability of defending in both cases. So even if the user has admin rights, they still will not be able to read a file or be able to go in and steal like a cookie, as an example. Awesome. Yeah. So what you've just described, we actually have this built into our product as a defense. So if you want to prevent people from stealing service accounts, we have a policy for preventing credential theft with service accounts, the credential manager, harvesting the RSA machine keys that are on a machine. This is a server-related policy right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if you install EPM on a server, if it happens to be a domain controller, we would definitely want you to enable the rules to protect the domain controller database. But for other types of policies that we have that are server-related, all of these policies that you see here are specifically for servers. And then we have the policies here that could apply to both Windows endpoints, whether they're servers or workstations.
Yeah, it looks like you guys covered all of the bases there. SAM hash, pass the ticket, pass the hash, LSAS, credential harvesting. You've got all the greatest hits listed out there, dude. That's like we're ready to ship that album out and get our top 10 greatest hits on the market, I think.
Yeah,
That's,
it is it's a very cool feature in our system. As far as I can tell, this is a real differentiator for us. There's no other product in the least privileged space that offers any type of credential protection. I know. And
so this is are these policies that are out of the box, or are these policies that you had to come in and populate, or are they part of the quick start?
They are out of the box.
Oh, sweet.
So they come with EPM. You just simply have to enable them. We do recommend that you go through a process of tuning some of these policies. I know for a fact, for example, our browser policies are very accurate. They have a low false positive rate. They don't require a lot of tuning because the pathway to get to a Chrome credential is pretty limited. So we know what is a legitimate access versus what is not a legitimate access. It's not quite the same for Windows. There is some tuning involved, but our policies do work. You should just put them into tech mode and help tune them before you actually deploy them in an actual block mode.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Well, Fran, I really appreciate you coming on the show, spending a couple hours with me. I've honestly, I've learned a lot. This has really been my deepest dive into EPM since I've been employed at CyberArk. I always feel like I've been on the opposite end of the spectrum dealing, with developers. And it seems like we're finally, getting together here, right? Like it's coming full circle, and the developers are needing a little help on their endpoints. So I'm sure that we'll have a lot of great things to talk about. May 20th through the 22nd in Nashville for CyberArk Impact 24. And then, we'll have the Ask Joe Anything live there on May 22nd. You'll be one of 6 panelists that'll be there with me, answering questions from the audience, answering questions from me. But regardless, Fran, anything that you want to end with, wrap up with, anything at all? You got anything going on soon? You want to shout out to somebody? It's all you, dude.
I just have to say, this is my first experience doing one of these talks, and it was a pleasure to be on board for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Fran. And thank you everyone out there on YouTube, LinkedIn Live, and Twitch. We'll be back in less than a month, in 22 days-ish. It's May 2nd. I can't do math that fast, but May 22nd will be at Impact. I've been talking about it for the past 2 hours. So until then, stay secure.
Peace out.